The story almost always begins not in terror, but in a deep, almost boring sense of normalcy. The narrator, who we immediately align with, establishes their world for us. We learn about the house, often a family home they've lived in for years, a place of comfort and memory. And then we are introduced to the woods. These aren't a foreboding mythical forest from a fairy tale. They are simply there, a natural fact of the narrator's life. They are described as familiar, perhaps even friendly, a place of childhood exploration, building forts and imagining adventures. This establishment of the mundane is the story's first and most crucial trick. It lulls both the narrator and the reader into a state of security. This is a safe, recognizable world. Nothing bad can happen here. The first sign is never a dramatic event. It is a whisper, a flicker, something so small and subtle that it is almost missed. It usually happens during a moment of quiet contemplation, the narrator gazing out a kitchen window while doing dishes, or looking out their bedroom window before drawing the curtains for the night. The time of day is critical. It's often at dusk, in that liminal space between day and night where the light plays tricks, or on an overcast day where the woods are a tapestry of grays and greens. And then they see it. Deep within the lattice of trees, standing perfectly still, is a figure. It is too far away to make out any detail. It is merely a vertical shape that the brain, trained to recognize the human form, interprets as a person. The reaction is not initially fear, but a mild, curious confusion. The thought process is rational. Who is that? What are they doing out there? The figure's complete stillness is its first unnerving quality. People in woods don't stand like statues. They move, they walk, they forage. The narrator will likely squint, try to focus, and then, almost without fail, they will rationalize it away. It must be a trick of the light and shadow, making a dead tree look like a person. Maybe it's a hunter, though it's not hunting season. Perhaps it's just a neighbor, lost in thought. The narrator might even look away for a moment, expecting the figure to have moved when they look back. But it hasn't. It remains, fixed, watching. The initial chilling sighting inevitably fades, softened by the relentless ordinariness of daylight and routine. The narrator convinces themselves it was nothing, a trick of the mind, a odd-shaped tree they'd never noticed, a prank played by the evening shadows. For a day, perhaps two, the world resets. The woods are just woods again. But then it returns. This is where the quiet unease begins to crystallize into a cold, dreading certainty. It's never in the same place. The next time the narrator glances out, their eyes are drawn almost against their will to a different spot, closer to the property line. And there it is, the same tall, impossibly still figure. It is not closer by a few random feet. Its advance feels deliberate, significant. The distance it has crossed is too great to have been traversed by any ordinary means in the time between sightings. This is the first concrete rule the entity establishes. It moves when it is not being watched. This is the birth of the pattern, and with it, a terrible ritual begins. The narrator finds themselves drawn to the windows, not out of curiosity, but out of a compulsive need to check. It becomes a dreadful game of peekaboo where the stakes feel inexplicably high. Each confirmed sighting is a jolt of adrenaline, a mix of fear and a grim validation that they are not going mad. The figure is real, and it is coming closer. The narrator's response is instinctively human. They seek a tool, a way to bridge the distance and solve the mystery. They fumble for a pair of binoculars or zoom in with a camera phone, their hands slightly unsteady. But instead of providing answers, technology only deepens the horror. The enhanced view reveals nothing comforting. They might confirm the humanoid shape, but the details are all wrong. The proportions are off, perhaps too thin or too tall, its limbs seeming just a fraction too long. The face, if it can be called that, is a smudge of undefined features, or worse, holds a blank wooden quality that is utterly alien. The tool meant to demystify only reinforces the unnaturalness of the thing. Driven by a need for reassurance, the narrator breaks the silence and tells their family. This moment is a critical turning point, a rupture in their sense of reality. The reaction is never what they hope for. Parents offer dismissive smiles. "It's just your imagination," they say. Probably a deer standing on its hind legs. A sibling might tease them for being scared of a statue or a stray coat hung on a branch. This dismissal is more isolating than the creature itself. The person is now alone with their knowledge, their fear deemed invalid, their reality questioned. The very people who are their protectors have unknowingly abandoned them to the thing in the woods, cementing its presence as a secret burden they must now carry alone. The figure is no longer just in the woods, it is growing, undeniable and terrifying in the space between the narrator and the people they love. The pattern, once established, becomes a dreadful new routine. The narrator is trapped in a cycle of anxious vigilance, their eyes constantly drifting toward the windows, their heart seizing for a moment every time they confirm the figure's presence. But the entity's patience, it seems, has its limits. This is the scene where the slow, methodical stalking shifts into something more aggressive. This is the acceleration. The advance is no longer a matter of a few yards each day. The figure makes a leap forward that feels like a violation of the unspoken rules of the game. One evening, it is standing at the very edge of the tree line, its form now clear enough to be studied without the aid of binoculars. The wrongness of its proportions is no longer a suspicion. It is a chilling fact. It might be gaunt to the point of emaciation, its limbs possessing a jointless, unnatural length. Or it might be hulking and distorted, a crude imitation of a man carved from shadow and rotten wood. It does not blink. It does not sway in the wind. It is simply present, its entire being focused on the house with a terrifying intensity. This breach of the tree line is a monumental event. The woods were its domain, a buffer zone between the known and the unknown. Now, it has left its territory and is standing on the lawn, your lawn, the space for childhood games, for barbecues, for letting the dog out. That space has been defiled, its innocence stripped away. This violation is often underscored by the reaction of an animal. A family dog that whines and scratches at the door to be let back in, its tail tucked between its legs, or a cat that arches its back and hisses at a seemingly empty darkness beyond the glass. Animals, with their primal instincts, refuse to rationalize what they see. Their fear is pure, undeniable, and it serves as a final terrifying confirmation to the narrator that this is not imagination. This is real, and it is a threat that the natural world recognizes and recoils from. The panic has settled into a cold, heavy weight in the pit of the stomach. The house is locked down, a fortress of drawn blinds and bolted doors, but it feels like a pathetic illusion. The narrator knows, with a certainty that chills their blood, that these barriers are meaningless. The thing has advanced beyond the realm of distant observation. It is now an active participant, and the final act is inevitable. This scene almost always takes place at night. The darkness is total, a suffocating blanket that presses against the windows. The family has gone to bed, oblivious or dismissive, leaving the narrator alone in the waking world with their terror. They might be huddled on the living room couch, pretending to watch television or lying rigid in their bed, every nerve ending screamingly alert. The only sound is the frantic hammering of their own heart. Then a light flicks on. The blinding electric white beam of the motion sensor light in the backyard floods the darkness outside the window. It is a jarring, violent intrusion of the modern and mundane onto the primal scene. The narrator's head snaps up. Their breath catches. They are compelled to look, drawn to the window by a force equal parts terror and a desperate need to know. There it is. Illuminated in the harsh, clinical light, it stands in the center of the yard. No longer at the edges, no longer partially obscured by trees. It is fully revealed, and the sight is worse than any nightmare. Every wrong detail is now horrifically clear. The grotesque length of its arms, ending in fingers that are too long or too still. The pallor of its skin, which might look like rough bark or slick, wet clay. And the face, a void where a face should be, or a distorted mask of features that are almost human, but arranged in a way that screams of something profoundly alien and old. It does not blink in the light. It does not react. It simply stands, a monument of wrongness, and it is not looking at the house anymore. It is looking directly at the narrator's window. It knows exactly where they are. The moment stretches, a silent, horrific standoff between the person in their fragile shell of a home and the thing that has come for them. The world holds its breath, and then it happens. A sound, a simple, ordinary sound made terrifying. From the front of the house comes a knock on the door. It is not a frantic pounding. It is not the polite, rhythmic tap of a neighbor. It is slow, deliberate, heavy. Each knock is a distinct, measured impact, like a stone being dropped onto a hollow log. Thud, thud, thud. It is the sound of immense, patient power. It is the sound of a predator that has finished the hunt and has now arrived to claim what is theirs. This is the ultimate violation. The entity has not just approached the house, it has demanded entry. It has transformed the most common signal of human arrival into a thing of nightmare. That knock shatters the last vestige of the narrator's sanity. Every rational thought, every ounce of courage evaporates. They are reduced to a pure, primal state of fear, frozen, unable to scream, unable to move, their entire world shrunk down to the space between those slow, methodical blows against their door. The knocking stops. The silence that follows is not a relief. It is heavier and more terrifying than the sound itself. It is a listening silence, a waiting silence. The narrator remains frozen, a statue of fear for what feels like an eternity, straining to hear any sound. A creak on the porch, a scratch at the door, the whisper of something moving just outside the window. But there is nothing, only the deafening, oppressive quiet. The rest of the night passes in a torturous limbo. Sleep is impossible. Every minute is spent staring into the darkness of their own room, imagining what is on the other side of every wall. The coming of dawn feels less like a salvation and more like the reveal of a crime scene. The first gray light of morning does not bring courage, but a numb, shell-shocked dread. This is where the story fractures, offering not a clean resolution, but a haunting, open-ended aftermath. The narrator, moving on autopilot, eventually musters the unbearable courage to approach a window and peer out. There is no sign of it. No footprints on the dewy grass, no mark on the door, no physical evidence that anything was ever there at all. This lack of proof is its own kind of horror. The narrator calls the police, their voice shaking. The officers arrive, polite but skeptical. They walk the perimeter, shine their flashlights into the now benign-looking woods, and find nothing. They offer the same dismissive platitudes as the family. It was an animal, a prank, the wind. They leave, and with them, they take the last hope of external validation. The narrator is left entirely alone with the absolute, unshakable knowledge of what happened. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.